Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Raj, founder of Prophecy. I also have with me Maciek, who's the co-founder of Prophecy. So today we'll be talking about low-code data engineering, right? So let us tell you a little bit about us first. So I'm coming from a lot of background in compilers. I've worked at Microsoft Visual Studio. I was one of the early authors of CUDA, a lot of work on the optimizations at NVIDIA, so that, that's all used in deep learning and all. And then I was the product manager for Apache Hive through the IPO, making sure Hive is dominant and it solves a lot of problems. And then Prophecy is focused on making data engineering or low-code data engineering super easy for everybody. And with me is Maciek. He'll be doing the presentation today. And he's an expert in Spark on machine learning and data engineering both. Now, so this talk is for you if you want to see how to become more productive with data engineering. Let's say you're a data engineer, let's say, or you have a team where the first team has gotten productive with Spark and Databricks, but now you want more people to become productive. Or if you want, maybe a platform team and you want to standardize, you want to make uh, data quality library and encryption decryption library, and said this is what we want used by everybody in the team. So there is standardization of components, standardization of best practices around CI/CD, etc. So that's what we focused on. So let's first talk about what the state of data engineering is today. Like our view is today, it's too hard, it's too slow. It's just way too much work, way more than it needs to be. So what does that mean? If you want to standardize your development, a lot of enterprises are building platforms, and it's a lot of work, and everybody's kind of rolling out their own. Also, most teams, once they get the first team successful, they want to have Spark and Databricks platform rolled out across the enterprise, and then enabling 10x users super hard, making them productive is super hard, right? And so what are your choices today? Maybe you'll use a visual ETL tool. It's too old school, restricted, doesn't integrate with this new world of code, or you go with coding. Perhaps the first team can succeed, and then but getting the next 100 people, getting the next 1,000 people on your platform, is very, very hard. So this is what we'll be focusing on today. And then we also have a talk tomorrow about at the same time, where we'll be covering metadata. It's like if you have your Spark programs, your data engineering, do you have search? Do you have column level lineage? And most people we talk to don't. There's not really a good solution in the market. And the next thing we'll also be talking on tomorrow, which is titled Low Code Airflow, is scheduling, right? Scheduling is too hard. You have to, write all schedules by hand. Once you have 1,000 workflows, that becomes really hard. And then you have to do continuous delivery, deployment, rebuilding jars, recovery, monitoring, like a whole lot of things are left to you. And we'll talk about how those can be simplified. Now, coming back to the development on Prophecy, so we are trying to get you the best of both two worlds, right? There's productivity and standardization that has come with ETL tools. Again, they're too restrictive, so we abandon them. But then you go to the code and you have the power and flexibility, but it's way too much work and hard to standardize and hard to be productive. Prophecy is focused on giving you the best of both worlds. Let us show you how. So let us dive into the architecture and see how we work with your current infrastructure that you have today. So in your infrastructure, you have Git, you have perhaps your shell, you have a Spark cluster, Airflow, and storage, right? So all of that is there, it's running. Prophecy will come in and add a layer on top. So we add our data engineering system on top, where you get a visual Spark editor, so you can do visual drag and drop development. We give you some gems, right? These gems are what will allow you to develop standard sources, targets, and transformations. As you develop them, basically you're writing high quality code on Git, right? So this ensures that you are integrated with the world of Git and everything you're doing is open source code. Now, once you can do this for Spark, you can do the same for Airflow. You can do visual drag and drop development for Airflow, run it interactively on Airflow that is deployed, and see if the schedule works for you. The third thing is, now that we know where your data sets are, we know where your code is, you get metadata search and column level lineage, so you can track any value across the entire system. So this solves one part of the problem. You're integrated with your code-based system and have the best agile practices. But the next thing we talked about was that in addition to standardization, the ETL tools don't give you the flexibility you need, and the code does. So to address that, we give you a gem builder. What that means is that the gems that we provide, which are the sources, the targets, the transformations, you can think of them as a standard library. And we also give you a gem builder where you can write your own. And it is as powerful. It's a first-class citizen. We build all our gems in the standard library with the same framework. So you'll be able to build your own data quality framework, your own encryption, decryption, whatever logging, monitoring, auditing, whatever things that you want to standardize, you'll be able to add that to Prophecy as your own set of gems and be able to use them and roll them across your team. So this solves both your problems, right? It makes you super productive as well as gives you the full power of code. Now, if you do not want to worry about the details and just get started, you can just use Prophecy as a data engineering system with simple to use low code development environment and not worry about the details. Now, if you wanted to get started, it's super easy. You go to app.prophecy.io. There is a SaaS version. You can just connect to your Databricks account. I think 3 accounts, 3 users are free. Or if you want an enterprise trial, you'll use our Databricks account and you can use that for 2 weeks. Again, you can sign up from the same place. Now, let's move on to the demo, which is what we'll focus on for the rest of the presentation. So first will be for the data engineers, if you want to develop more productively, how can you do that using a visual editor, using a code editor? How can you write tests? And how can you get all of what you've developed on your Git? Also, if you're an architect or you're from the platform team and you want to build your own framework and roll it out to the rest of your organization, we'll show you how you can use the gem builder to do that with an example of data quality. With that, Maciek will now continue this and give you the demo.
Thanks, Raj. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Today, what we're going to show you is how easy it is for anyone to build your own first data engineering pipeline in just under 5 minutes. So the first screen you'll end up when you're logging into Prophecy is the metadata screen. This is where all of your data engineering lives. What you're seeing here is the first project, the Hello World project, that you have all of your example workflows in. This is where you can get started. But for now, let's try to create a new project. So I'll just go ahead here and let's call it Summit project. Your project is where all of your workflows, data set, and schedules are, and all of them are stored directly on Git. So let's go ahead now and create a new workflow within that project. Okay, and we get right redirected to the Prophecy IDE. Here we see the empty white canvas on which we can start drawing our data transformations using the predefined gems that are right at the top. But let's first actually connect to our Databricks cluster. We have 2 ways of doing that. We can attach to an existing cluster, or we can create a completely new one. Let's attach that to an existing cluster. And here we go. Just like this, in under 2 seconds, we are attached now to a Databricks cluster. So what we would like to do today in terms of our data pipeline is to build a simple reporting tool that will allow us to see all the customers' spendings. So to do that, let's go ahead and start with our data sources. I can just drag and drop the data source gem, data set, choose a CSV file, pick the appropriate file in our file browser, put a name, and of course I can look at the schema and the preview. If I want to, I can customize the properties for reading the data set, but those defaults look good for now. And here we go. Within 2 seconds, we can see now the preview of our data set and the schema related to it. Let's just click create, apply, and here we go. That was super fast. And now we created our first data source with the correct path, the schema being there, and all the properties already set in our Spark reader. And let's just repeat this process. Let's do the same thing for our orders data set. I'll just click on CSV file, choose the right path to it, This time it will be an orders data set. Let's get the schema. Properties looks good. And here we go. This is our orders data. And now we can see the amounts for each order for our customer IDs. Wonderful. Now that we have all of our data sources, let's actually try to go and join them. So we'll just drag and drop our join gem, connect the data sources to it. Let's open it up, set the join condition. You can see how easy it is to specify the join condition just within a few clicks. We did that. Let's pick the columns that are interesting to us. Let's say first name, last name, order ID, status, and amount. And here we go. Wonderful. So that was a lot of hard work to build our first 3-component data pipeline. What we would like to do now is, of course, make sure that it actually works correctly. So on every single one of those gems, now what you can see here in the small play button, you can click on it. And by clicking on it, you start an interactive debugging session. And you can start seeing all the data flowing immediately in just literally 3 seconds. So I can see my customers' data already. I can see my orders data. And of course, now the joint customer orders data, where I can see the amount with associated customer information. Awesome. So now let's actually add some transformations. I'll choose all the columns that are flowing from the upstream, and let's add a full name column. Now, when of course building the transformations, again, you're seeing the expression builder right here. So never again you have to remember any of the Spark function definitions or look into the documentation. It's all right here for you. The definition, the examples, you can just choose the right function, click tab, and there you go. And of course also the schema. Never again you have to do any commands to inspect the data frame schema. It's right here in front of you. Let's apply that. Give a better name to our component. And here we go. Now let's do some aggregation. So what we would like to do is sum up all the amounts for each customer. Let's drag and drop the aggregate join. Let's say we'd like to sum up the amounts, and let's count the orders. And we can group by our customer ID. Okay, that looks good. Let's actually try again and debug our pipeline. So I can just click and save the workflow and click that play button again. And just like this, I can already see the data flowing. Let's also drag and drop our final target that we'll write our report to. And we can see our reformat now with our full name column, our aggregate with now the orders being counted per each customer with the sum of the amounts. Okay, let's define our report now. So we can just write a Parquet file. Let's choose a report. Overwrite the data. The schema looks good. It immediately shows up here. Let's create it, save. And we are done. Just like this, we have defined a complete data pipeline directly in Spark in like 2-3 minutes. But Prophecy is not just a visual drag and drop editor. Behind this workflow is actual high quality Spark code. And what you can do is just click on this code button where you'll see your normal structure that you would probably use for any other Scala Spark project. So I can see my main file. I can see all of the components being in separate objects, and I can see, of course, my build files. Now I can dive into any one of those Scala objects, and I can see this is, for instance, my join component that takes 2 data frames in and spits out another joint data frame. So it's vanilla Spark code without any other third-party libraries. Now, within my reformat component, this is, for instance, the code that was generated. This is not just a viewer, right? So I can go ahead and actually modify those queries. Let's add a literal here. We can save that directly, go back to the visual mode, and run it again. Now, when I open my reformat, of course, I see my modification, and the data that was produced now contains the dash that I have added. So thanks to Prophecy, now anyone can be productive. Doesn't matter if you know SQL and you're a data analyst who just wants to understand their data, you can be very productive. Or if you want to write your own high quality Scala code, with the right formatting, right build system and all that good stuff, you can absolutely do that. Okay, so the next step that we would like to do is, now that we have built our data pipeline, let's make sure it's gonna keep being reliable, right? So let's add unit tests to it. Now, historically, unit tests, I'm sure, have been dreaded by everyone, but with Prophecy, we make it super simple because you can just generate unit tests. So I can just open up any component, go to the unit test section, click generate, and now I can provide my unit test name. So let's say that I would like to validate my order status. I have two different unit test types. So I can either specify predicates, or I can just make sure that the data on the input and on the output is equal. So let's say I'd like to create a predicate. Let's choose the order status column, and let's generate the test. Now, what happens in the background is that all the data that was processed before in that interactive debug mode, we assume it to be the gold standard data, and we pull it within the snapshot of your test. So this is my input data. As you can see, it's right here now, and I can just write my predicate. So that I will be checking that my order status is either finished, started, approved, or pending. Awesome. So I can just as easily now go ahead and click run, and the unit test will run for me. Now, while this is happening, let us actually go ahead and make sure that all the hard work that we've been working on so far is visible to everyone in the organization. So here I have this GitHub project, Summit session, that I would like all of my workflows in this complete Prophecy project to end up in. What I can do is I can just open the metadata back again, open our Summit project that we have created, and configure the Git access to it. So I just need the username, personal access token, and there we go. Now when I open my Git, you can see all of your code directly here. So I can just switch to my development branch, and this is the workflow that we've been working on. Just a minute ago, there has been a commit here. You can open it up and actually inspect the code. And you can, of course, just pull this code and run normally within your terminal, IntelliJ, or whatever is your preferred way as well. And here's, for instance, the test that we just wrote, right? So all of this code has been just written for us with minimal amount of work. Now going back to our test screen, here we go. The test has finished successfully. Our order status has computed. We have one check mark, 100% success rate. Wonderful. Okay, so with that, we have created this whole end-to-end pipeline, but what we've been doing so far is we kept using those gems that were defined at the top, right? So those are the predefined gems that come with Prophecy. The obvious question is whether the users can add more of those gems. And they absolutely can, right? Whether you want to add your Elasticsearch connector or any other transformation within Spark, you can go in and define your own gems to make your whole team and organization productive on the same standardized code. To do that, we open the gem list, and this is all the list of all the gems that have been built in Prophecy. Those are all the predefined ones. You can go in, inspect them, and edit them. And they have all been built using the same gem builder that we're going to use in a second to create our own gem. So let's actually go ahead and build a new gem. Let's call it data quality. Let's make sure it's here. Okay, we can open it up. Okay, and so now we can see the gem specification builder and the complete screen for that. Now, how does it work? It's actually very straightforward. So your gem specification, think about it as essentially a template that your users will be filling in. The gem specification contains a couple of different pieces, but most importantly, everything is contained within a single file. You can just click the preview button. This is where the user will see the actual screen. They have all the properties here that they can fill out, right? The checkboxes, the text boxes, all of that stuff. They can just click save. and you'll be able to see the code generated for that. Now, looking at the breakdown of the actual gem specification, we have 3 sections, right? We have the properties, which is the template values that the users would have to fill in. We have the dialog method, which actually specifies how the UI is being built, aligned, and all of that stuff, and the actual code. Now, let's go ahead and actually build our data quality component out of that. So for that, let's assume that I would like to use the AWS's DQ library. I have here prepared a couple of different things. So we can just say, those are gonna be our properties for the data quality component. We're just gonna have a check name and the different constraints supported, like has size or is complete, which checks whether our column is not null. Let's define our dialog specification for the UI. And let's define our actual code function. Cool, so when you look at this code function, essentially what it does is very straightforward, right? It just takes the template values that were provided from the user, and using the standard Scala, or in future also Python code, it just uses the standard data frame transformations as if you would be modifying your data frames normally. So I'm taking the name, I'm taking the constraints, and applying them to the verification suite in this case. I can just click preview. And now we'll see exactly what the user will see on the when using that gem, right? So I can just try it out. Let's add a constraint. Let's make sure has size is greater than 100. Let's add another constraint. Make sure that some column name is complete, maybe another column name. Now I can just save it. And I will, of course, see now nice standardized code generated out of that, right? Where we have our verification result and the verification suite with appropriate checks. Just like that, we have defined our new data quality component. And now it is also visible in our workflow. So if we go back to our workflow, now we have this new category here, My Gems, where I can just drag and drop the data quality gem, connect it to whichever component I wanted to, open it up and start filling it and using it normally as I was able to use any other components within Prophecy. So just like that, you can make sure your team uses standardized same code, and it's very easy for anyone within your whole organizations. Raj, back to you.
Thank you so much for the amazing demo, Maciek. So as you have seen, it's so easy to build workflows and standardize your code in Prophecy. And so one thing I did want to say is that if you're using the visual editor, all you need to do is visual drag and drop and write SQL expressions with the help of the expression builder. So it's easier than even writing SQL code, right? And on the back end, we have support for Scala and we have support for Python or PySpark. And for the gem builder, Scala is supported and PySpark is coming in a few weeks. With that, Prophecy, as we have shown you, gives you low-code data engineering that is super easy to get started with and super easy to become productive on, right? So what is our focus? The focus is you have to be productive on Spark and Delta. You can get many, many more teams on your platform, make them productive. Also, the code you are generating is standardized and you have agile practices developed in your organization. And finally, we give you a complete solution, right? It's not a small piece. You can do Spark development, you can do Airflow development, you can do metadata search, lineage, everything, the full thing that you need to become successful with data engineering. Prophecy provides you with that. Now, also tomorrow, we have the presentation on low-code Apache Airflow. We also will show Airflow and metadata search and lineage. So please join us tomorrow. It'll be 30 minutes before this presentation. So see you there. With that, we are happy to take any questions now.